Hi everyone, welcome to Failing Up, a limited series from the shallow end about our collecting mistakes and how they help us better understand ourselves and this hobby. It's about those unpleasant moments that make us better collectors. I'm Dave, and I wanted to do this series to help us all feel a little better about our own mistakes. We've all made them. No one's perfect, so maybe we can learn from each other. Today we welcome Matt Worley, host of the up-and-coming Slabnomics podcast. If you haven't yet, check it out. He's an exciting new voice in this card space. In this episode, you'll hear Matt describe, in detail, something many of us went through when first getting into, or getting back into, the hobby. This is a lesson about what happens when you're still finding yourself, and the mistakes that come with that. So today's guest on Failing Up on the Shallow End podcast feed is Matt Worley. Matt is the host of a fantastic new, I'm not sure if I can still call it new, but we'll call it new podcast called Slabnomics. I strongly recommend that you check it out. Matt, thank you for being here. And if you wouldn't mind, please share a mistake from your collecting past.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Dave. Before I jump into it, yours is one of the podcasts that really got me into it. So I can claim you as one of my icons. So really glad to be here.
Thank you.
My mistake that I made is something that I think a lot of collectors have made. And it almost isn't as much a mistake as kind of a barrier to entry or a rite of passage. And that is not knowing what you're going to collect from the get-go. So what I did, and I think a lot of friends have done that they've told me, is you get into the collecting space and you just start buying things. And you don't really have any direction towards what that is. For me, I came in, I'm a Packers fan, but my collecting activity has always been in other things. I won't get into those other things here, but when I came into sports card collecting, I was like, well, I'm a Packers fan, so I'll just start buying Packers cards. And you just search Packers cards on eBay, and you just start being like, oh, well, that's a cool card, that's a cool card, and you start buying these little things. But what I've found as a collector, as I've matured in that pathway, is that you start to realize, well, it's not just all the Packers cards that I'm going to want. You know, after maybe 3, 4, or 5 months, you start being like, well, this was a Packer player. I have some memories about this player, but am I really going to have this in my collection in 5 years, 10 years? Is it going to be something that I look back with a lot of joy on? And I think it kind of goes to the point that I've heard in your podcast before, which is we have limited budgets, right? At the end of the day, our collection is going to be a certain size. So what I would propose is something I've talked about on my podcast, which is first trying to figure out who you are as a collector. And this is something I sat down and did. And I broke it into 4 different collecting activities, identities, and statements. And those are centered around sets. So am I a set builder? Am I a team investor? Am I a role collector? Or am I like a style investor? So it's like, what speaks to me and where does my identity go? Am I a Packers fan? Yes. But I found that I don't really want to just collect Packers. Am I a set builder? I am. I love completing sets. I love the history of it. I love the story that goes into this was the first set that, they made in this sport and those kind of things. So that's one of my primary ones, but my real one is style. So I love collecting iconic moments. I love collecting things that are a portal to that place. And you can look at it and you can feel like, wow, that's Rickey Henderson and his rookie card. And I can look at that and I can feel 1980, like I wasn't around in 1980, but I can kind of feel that through the card. So to me, it's almost like when you take those little assessments, like Enneagrams or those workplace assessments they make you make. What kind of collector am I? And I'm a set builder and iconic moments style collector. So I wish I would have known that before I started just willy nilly buying, because now I kind of want to sell those early cards and focus my collection a lot more.
I think what you're talking about is something that a lot of us felt when we started getting back into the hobby. For those of us who were on a break and, years and then came back and started accumulating rather than collecting, I guess. So just to take a step back and what you were saying before, how did you start to realize that? Or not how, but when, and what was that process like as you're getting these Packers cards in? And you're not any less of a Packers fan, but you're realizing that maybe this wasn't the collecting lane that you wanted. How was that process of feeling and negotiating that, and then starting to pivot a little bit?
Yeah, excellent question. And I think you hit it on the head with the word feeling. You look at the card and there's a feeling that you have. And when you had Chris on, y'all spoke about that. You get a card in the mail, you look at it, and the feeling that you had wasn't what you expected it to be. So there's a little bit of trial and error in there, right? As there is in any activity. But I think also it's a measure of, after about a month, I was looking at what I had. And I said to myself, am I going to have these cards in 5 years? Are they going to bring me joy in 5 years? And then that's where I started making the choice to be a little bit more disciplined in my collecting. And as you say, moving from the accumulating phase into the more refined collecting phase.
So now you're in the spot where it sounds like you still have a lot of these cards, these Packers cards, but maybe it might be in your best interests or not to move on with them. So I'm curious, maybe it's more pragmatic and practical than it is emotional, but why you haven't done that yet? And, at some point, do you see yourself moving the Packer cards or whatever cards you were collecting at the beginning to collect more of what does move you more now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've already started that process, and it's a slow unwinding process. I think we've all found that selling cards is harder than buying them. And it can be a very slow process, one that eats away at you when you start putting taxes and fees on top of the things. So it can be a very difficult, deflating process. But if you have that idea of, this is why I'm doing it, this is my guiding thesis, I talk a lot about that in more of an investment way. But you can also have a guiding thesis in your collecting. And so even though I bought this card for, say, $50, the value is really tied to what it is to me, right? And I think that's a key point as collectors. We can get anchored with that bias into, I paid $50, I need to get $50 for this card so that I feel like I didn't make a mistake. But at the end of the day, if you paid 50 and you end up getting 40 for it, and you can move that 40 into something that brings you more joy, I think that's a win. And it doesn't always come down to dollars and cents in life. A lot of times it comes down to, am I happy with the choices that I made? And how quick did I go to try and resolve those things that maybe I didn't make the best choices?
So I think maybe I didn't phrase the question right at the beginning when I said, tell us about a mistake, because the process that you went through or are going through is something that we're all going through, and it's more of a process than it is a mistake. It seems to me it would have been a bad decision had you thought, well, I'm already this far into it, I just have to hang on to these cards. But instead, you have found something that you like better in the collecting space, and it sounds more like you have an opportunity than it is that you did make a mistake. So maybe for those who are not familiar with you yet, just briefly share, if you would, what you do collect now and what you do get more enjoyment out of, and that will help us better understand the sort of your path.
Absolutely. And I do think that you're 100% right, that we learn from these things and we figure out through experience, the greatest teacher, what we're actually going to do long term. And that's really what matters, the activity, the journey, not really the end, because there is no end. What I collect now is moments, like I said, iconic moments. My favorite card that I like to talk about is my 1980 Rickey Henderson rookie. It has a signature, and with that signature, it has the inscription Man of Steel. And so to me, it's an iconic card with the man holding it. To me, I like to think that he looked at it and he thought to himself, man, I was so young. Like maybe he was transported back to the time where he was just coming into the league and he hadn't built the legacy of who Rickey Henderson ended up being, such a huge personality. And he signed that Man of Steel card. And this is all just me romanticizing the thing, but that to me is a portal maybe for him, but also a portal for all of us, seeing someone do something so great that will never be equaled. I don't think anyone will ever steal as many bases as he did, and talking to that on that card. So I collect iconic moments like that, moments in history, like Max Verstappen 2020 cards. Try to get all of his championship cards. For Sapphires, I kind of go towards Sapphires in most of my collecting, because I just think they have a lot of legacy. And then I go for a lot of first sets. So in soccer, I do a lot of 2014 Prism World Cup, 2017 Topps Chrome, and then a little bit of women's soccer as well. Mm-hmm. So 2022 Topps Chrome Sapphire for them. And then all the other sets, I would say mostly go around cards that end up on iconic lists. And from there, I pick my favorite ones and ones that speak most to me. And then I put them on my wish list and figure out how I'm going to get to them and how long it's going to take.
Sure. What would you say to someone if they were just getting back into the hobby and they were just sort of grabbing this and this and grabbing this and that, and they started to feel a little bit discouraged? What might you say to them to help them stick around and not feel so bad about maybe not feeling like they are as focused as they need to be?
Yeah, I would say it's normal. It's okay. What you're feeling is very normal. We've all gone through it. And then I would encourage them to really sit down, take the time out, put your phone down, maybe even put the computer away, and just think about how you've felt when you've gotten certain cards and focus on your gut. That's something I've been doing a lot in my personal life when I want to make decisions. Look at your gut, because it will tell you which way to go. Think about your card, look at how it makes you feel in your gut. And then if you do that enough times, say you do that 50 times and you just sit there in a meditative pose and do that 50 times, it will probably spark in you the things that you're most drawn to. And if you do that kind of self-work, I know it sounds maybe a little kitschy. I'm in Austin, so maybe it's a little kitschy and a little bit outside of what a lot of people do. But if you do that kind of thing, I think it gives you a lot of clarity and gives you a lot of focus and purpose. And as human beings, I think we all crave and desire that.
Purpose is exactly where my mind was going when you were saying that. And it sounds to me like you are trying to be deliberate and planning, ahead and intentional, I guess, of what you want to get before you get it. So when you talked about like writing things down and doing these things, it sounds like are you someone who keeps records, who keeps things like spreadsheets and notes to help you think? That's what the act of writing is, right? Writing is not an act of just saying what you think. It's an act of figuring out what you think. So how do these moments when you are trying to think ahead, how do those help you sort of become more concise and understanding of what it is that you want?
I'm lucky enough to have a podcast so that I can speak into it and I write it, as I'm sure you do as well. So that keeps me true to my identity and true to what I'm trying to build long term, because I can always go back and I can see what I talked about and then evaluate it. I also do keep a lot of spreadsheets. It depends on, I have a lot of different activities that I do in the space. So different spreadsheets accomplish different things, but I am always tracking whenever I have this new idea, right? Like I put out a lot of content on my Slabnomics Instagram. So I always have these new ideas and I always track them in like a notes file. And they're separated out by project ideas, content ideas, and then informational ideas, which are how do I find out and learn about this thing that I don't know about yet. So I think having a focus of what you're trying to do really just has to do with kind of the end game of what you see for yourself. And once you know that, you can kind of backtrack into filling out what that journey looks like. So I don't know where my podcast is going to end up. I don't know what it's going to look like in a year, but I do know how it's been going. And I know I can keep doing the things I've been doing and then layer on a new thing once every couple of weeks, right? Like I've been doing this one thing, and let's go back to collecting because that's a better activity to put this into. But I like collecting this one thing, like say it's one set, the 2014 Prizm World Cup. I'm collecting that. Well, I start getting interested in something else that's kind of ancillary to that, right? So maybe there's another set that goes hand in hand, like that 2017 Topps Chrome. Well, I start looking into that and I start learning about that too. I think we can get a little bit into sprawl, and then we end up kind of right back where we were with that, having too many cards and not enough focus. So it's kind of a constant battle to figure out how to keep focused enough in our collecting activities while also retaining enough creative juice to keep going down rabbit holes and keep being interested in things. And I think that takes a lot of writing and a lot of self-reflection to keep ourselves disciplined in the collecting space.
So as we wind down here, I was really taken by what you just said toward the end about how, you know, you find these ancillary sets or cards or subsets or inserts or whatever, where you can get too far out. It's almost like drifting when you're in race car driving, right? Where you've got to, you know, not go too far out. Otherwise you're going to be into the wall or you're going to be into the crowd or something along those lines, which is the same thing that you sort of mentioned at the beginning with the Packers, only now you're a little bit more experienced. So do you feel now like you're a little bit more aware of your style and aware of your habits, that you can rein yourself in a little bit quicker and you know when to push yourself outside your current zone because yes, you are interested, and when it might just be a momentary fad and you want to bring it back to where you were?
That's such a great question. I would say it is a measure of experience, and it's also the biggest thing in this is investment thesis. Why am I buying this card? What is my plan with it? Because I think we all have the collector's gene. That's why we're here. But we also end up buying and selling cards a lot. We won't say that we're flippers a lot of the time, but at the end of the day, if you buy cards, you usually end up selling some at some point. So if you're buying to sell, know when that sale window is probably going to be. If you're buying to hold forever, well, forever is a really long time. So kind of knowing yourself and knowing I might not have this card forever. If I did end up selling it, would that be difficult? Would I lose money on it? Those are ways that we can rein ourselves in a little bit when we're buying, just by having that thesis about why am I buying? What kind of card is this in the grand scheme of things? How liquid is it? I think those are ways that we can keep ourselves disciplined while still being able to do what we love.
Matt Worley, the Slabnomics podcast. Check it out. Matt, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again.